Following on from last month's Psikyo Shooting Stars Alpha, NIS America are bringing the second collection to the West, Psikyo Shooting Stars Bravo, and it may very well be the better of the two. As a compilation of arcade classics, we're going to forego our usual review structure and let anarchy take its course with this review. If you don't know who Psikyo are, I don't blame you, but a quick heads up that during the 90s and very early 2000s, they were a very prolific Japanese studio dedicated to producing some of the best arcade shooters of the era. They're pretty legendary in the shooter circle, and they've had a massive new lease of life on the Nintendo Switch, firstly thanks to Zero Div, then City Connection, and now in the West, thanks to NIS America. This is a second compilation following on from last month's alpha release, although to be fair, both have been out in Japan for quite a while. Anyways, in this collection there are 6 classic shooters, well 5, but we'll get to that point soon. Just to go over them briefly, we have Samurai Aces, Tengai, Sengoku Cannon, Gunbarrick, and Gunbird 1 and 2. That's 3 vertical shooters, 2 horizontal shooters, and 1 thing, but I'll get to that point soon, because I first want to talk about my 2 favorites, not only in terms of what's included in this package, but in terms of my favorite shmups and even my favorite games on the Switch. Gunbird 1 and 2 are just lovely shooters. The first is a simple affair, greatly enhanced by its personality and playability. Gunbird 2 was bolstered by more complicated systems, and both are glorious fun. While Psikyo have a reputation of being tough and borderline brutal thanks to their arcade nature, the Gunbird games are perhaps their most accessible of all and can be completed by pretty much anyone, even with the standard rule set, i.e. not spamming continues. They are so endlessly playable, accessible. These should be the top of the list if you're thinking about getting into arcade shooters. I can't recommend Gunbird 1 and 2 enough. Samurai Aces, also known as Sengoku Ace, was the first game made by Psikyo as a new company, and it does show somewhat, although as with the high standard of the shmups on offer, it's still very good indeed. It's the first game in the Sengoku series which eventually morphed into horizontal shooters rather than vertical like this one. The second game, being titled Tengai, I reviewed this one for the channel a long time ago, and for me it's one of the best horizontal shooters around. Okay, saying best may be overboard since everyone has different tastes and styles when it comes to shmups, but it's joint top of my favourite horizontal shooters alongside Blazing Star on the Neo Geo. Oh man, that reminds me I need to get playing Blazing Star again. Anyways, it features some great power-ups, a difficult but doable challenge, and it is just endlessly replayable. The third game is actually new to me. This is the first time that I've actually played Sengoku Cannon, so it's the reason that I was most excited to review this copy of Shooting Stars Bravo. I mean, I already own all of them, except this one. It's a weird one since it was developed after Psikyo as a company was dissolved, and it was made by a different developer, and made for the PSP. Well, you can see it's a very odd release, mixing 2D and 3D together. Indeed, the 3D backgrounds of the first level often made me genuinely nauseous due to how it swings all over the place while you're trying to focus on your 2D character. Yeah, it looks pretty awful, but actually it plays pretty fun due to the different attacks that you have in your arsenal. I was initially unimpressed, but once I started playing for a while, I really started to zone in and enjoy the gameplay, rather than focusing on the poor visuals. I honestly feel that if this game had traditional backgrounds, it would be far more respected in the shooter circles. Then finally we have the odd one out in the collection. We have Gunbarrick, or however you're supposed to pronounce it sounds German. This is more like an action puzzle game than a shooter. It's basically Breakout with a bit more in-depth elements, boss battles and the like. It's also properly tough, which may not sound out of the ordinary for an arcade game from Psikyo, but I don't think it wholly suits the genre that they went for here. Still, it is something very, very different, which gives this collection an extra layer of quality. I know people that love this game. I'm quite indifferent to it, at least I was originally when I reviewed it for my old channel, but this definitely has its fans, and playing it for this collection once more, I actually did start to like it a lot more this time around. It's worth trying to figure out all the nuances that it has to offer yourself. You know, take the time to learn this one as you would do any other Psikyo game, and I'm sure it'll open up for you. All the games offered here are well emulated as far as I can tell. Zero Div, the original porting team, did a really good job of putting them on the Nintendo Switch. There's a decent amount of customization going on too. Not quite up to what Hamster do with their Arcade Archive series, but still decent enough. You can select difficulty, obviously, but there's also the chance to change up how many lives you start with, how many continues you're allowed before a game over, button mapping and so on. Expected stuff, but still appreciated. The best thing is obviously being able to turn the play perspective. Yes, in the options you can rotate the screen in order to play in all its vertical glory, either using the switch on its side or perhaps with a flip grip, or you can do what I usually do and just turn a TV on its side. And oh boy, is that lovely. It's gaming perfection at this point. There's no other purity in terms of how zen this type of game style can make you feel. I highly recommend doing this as long as you don't mind risking your TV, but for me it's worth it. Are you enjoying this review so far? Then don't forget to hit that subscribe button for all our excellent Nintendo Switch content. We're also lovely people. Sadly, there are no online leaderboards. You're only competing against yourself in this regard, which is really the saddest part of this collection. I mean, personally, I'm not that much into score chasing against random people online or friends, but I know people who think that a game can live or die in terms of longevity for them, whether online leaderboards are present or not. I do think that there is a lot of replayability though. Majority of the shmups here take about 10-15 minutes for a run through. That may seem ridiculously short this day and age, but in all honesty, it's what makes them such great pick up and play titles. Many of them may be tough, but the short runtime means that they are learnable. Plus, as your skill increases, you can ramp up the difficulty. When you've got a short bit of time to spare, waiting around for something, these games are absolutely ideal for those 10-15 minute bursts. One thing that makes these so good for me are the multiple endings. Many of them have unique endings for each character, plus even more unique endings if you have two players, whereby each character combination has their own unique ending too. And if you don't have a friend like myself, don't worry, because Zero Div added in an option to falsely implement a second play into Gunbird 2 at least. So you can choose two characters but play alone, and the ending will play as though you've been playing with two characters all along. It's a nice little touch, and I wish they did it with all of the games here. Also, it's worth noting that this package comes as one icon with a game select screen upon booting up. This is much less messy than the 6 home screen icons that the Japanese version dumps on you. Now, putting this collection side by side with last month's collection, Alpha, for me, Bravo is the superior collection of games, and if I had to buy one, I'd go for Bravo. Which shows how dumb I am, because I actually bought the first one, but not the second one when it released in Japan. I mean, I would have bought it, but you know, budgetary issues and all that. And that's another thing to talk about. Shmup fans are really hardcore dudes, like really hardcore dudes. Alongside JRPGs, they are assumably the most imported genre of games, and this Western release of these two titles has taken its sweet time. All of these games have been available physically in the East, first when they released in Korea on 3 volumes, and then a Japanese release of 2 volumes, which is basically the Alpha and Bravo that we have here. I'm curious guys, who here would have bought this Western release if it had been alongside the Japanese release? My thinking is that the real audience of these games will have already purchased them. I don't know, I'm kind of worried at how successful these 2 releases will be because of that. What sets these apart are the fact that in the Japanese, these titles got a standard release as well as a limited edition, whereas in order to increase the value in the West, NIS America only have a limited edition version as far as I'm aware. There's no standard edition that I can find, at least. If you're buying this physically, you have no option but to get the soundtrack CD, the artwork, and cards. Man, I want those CDs. It's fair to say that the Japanese limited edition is slightly less classy, although if you do want to check those out, then there are links below, plus a standalone box from Japan if you don't fancy a big expensive box full of stuff that you don't need. Anyways, just check the description of this video and the pinned comment. You'll find everything there is to know about purchase options for these games physically. All of them are affiliate links, so if you do use them, then you'll also support the SwitchWatch team at the same time. I've also popped in some recommendations of similar games to this one that you may want to check out. You may fancy Esperadi, or whatever it's called, or perhaps Caladrius Blaze. Now, if you fancy this digitally, then you'll be looking at a cheaper price, $39.99 in euros and US dollars, as well as £35.99 in the UK. It's worth noting that you can purchase these games individually on the eShop for $7.99 or £6.99, which basically means you're almost getting one of these games for free by buying the package as a whole. It's not ridiculous value for money, especially if you already own a couple digitally. By that point, you'll be losing money. But I do feel this package is for those who want to jump in for the first time. Then it is great value, I think. I mean, like I've said many times, I find these types of games endlessly replayable. And while I may have my favorite, or 3, the variety means you can always go from one to another and get something fresh and different Physically, this is dropping for around $60 thanks to the extra goodies, which is steep but nothing unusual for a niche collection like this one. The CDs alone make it worth the price hike for me personally, and it seems like a nice little package overall with what people have showed me during my weekly physicals video. In the community spotlight, one dude showed off the box and art book and it looked really nicely put together. Overall, if you already own a couple of the shooters here digitally, then this collection will probably put you out of more pocket. You may as well continue to buy them individually, but if you're thinking about jumping in to the shooter scene with these excellent arcade classics, well then look no further. Last month we had the Strikers Heavy Alpha release, but for me, Bravo is the better of the collections. Gunbird 1 and 2 and Tengai are some of the ultimate classic arcade shooters of all time. Thinking about it, if I didn't already own any of these games and I was going in fresh, for me, Shooting Stars Bravo would be an easy 9 out of 10. Don't forget to check out my review of last month's release, Alpha, although it is a review of the Japanese release, but basically the same thing. This game also featured in yesterday's physicals releases video. Be sure to check out that to see which games are coming alongside these shooters. Also check out all the most hyped games that are releasing this month. I've been Jordan from SwitchWatch, and I'll see you over there. Take care.